My pitch idea has a very modern yet historical feel to it, through the major themes being represented through the queer community and through the racial minority community. Some of the main themes that I would like to touch on within this film is the idea behind interracial relationships, queer relationships, and also the prejudice and oppression against those minorities within racial groups and certain class groups. The main storyline that I would like to make into this film would be to have one African American boy and one white boy. The African American boy's name would be Jay, and the white boy would be Clayton. They become best friends, they go to the same school, they have the same interests, the same hobbies, and they hang out all the time after school doing sports and homework and all that stuff. They're seen as the ideal best friends. Eventually, Clayton goes to Jay's house, and he just right away off the bat notices there's a different dynamic behind Jay's form of living and Clayton's form of living. Jay does not have a father figure within the household, and his mom is constantly running around working and taking care of his younger siblings, whereas Clayton has a mother and a father figure, and they both are always present and there to aid to whatever Clayton needs. Clayton also notices that the neighborhood that Jay is living in is not as safe and secure feeling as the one Clayton lives in, since his is predominantly a white community. So he does see and experience a lot of the gang violence that occurs in Jay's community as well. They eventually start hanging out all the time. They become even closer friends, and eventually it's their senior year, and Clayton tells Jay that he is going to college after high school. Jay is kind of sad and taken aback by this because he is not planning on going to college. He is planning on staying home and working for his family to provide financial stability for them. The night before Clayton leaves for college, him and Jay are hanging out, and they share kind of an intimate moment with one another, and they soon realize that their relationship is beyond friendship and that they share intimate feelings for one another. They share that moment of intimacy, and then Clayton leaves and gets ready to go to college the next day. When Clayton leaves, he doesn't look back. He acts as though Jay was never there, was never a friend, and acts as though the night they shared of intimacy never happened. A couple years pass, Clayton spends his time in college, and Jay spends his time back home working for his family to provide that financial stability. And eventually Clayton comes back to the hometown where he met Jay, but he comes back engaged to a white woman. Jay hears that Clayton is back in town, but he doesn't obviously want to jump on that situation because he knows that he's engaged and Clayton completely blew him off, so he really did not want anything to do with Clayton at the time. Clayton shows up to Jay's family business when Jay is working, and he gets talking to Jay, and they kind of reminisce on the times when they were in high school and their intimate relationship as well. This kind of persuades Jay into giving into Clayton and allowing their relationship to kind of rebuild again. Eventually, Clayton and Jay share those intimate moments again, and Clayton is essentially having an affair against his fiance. The affair gets out, and his fiance eventually finds out, but she doesn't really take the approach that would be kind of expected when you hear that your fiance is cheating on you. She definitely understands the relationship that Jay and Clayton share, even though Clayton doesn't want to admit it to her. She definitely understands it, and so she's there for him, and she tells him that, I don't care what decision you make, I just want you to be happy, so if he makes you happy, I want you to go and be with him, because I understand there is a history there. Clayton, being the strong and stubborn person that he is, denies it and constantly denies it. He gets so frustrated with the rumors going around town that he decides to move away with his fiance again. A couple more years pass, and Jay is still stuck at home working for his family and working to take care of his parents or his mom now that she's older, and he's taking care of his younger siblings still. And eventually Clayton comes back again, but this time Clayton has called off his marriage with his fiance, and he comes back for Jay. And he is basically confessing his love for Jay and being very, very vulnerable towards Jay. And Jay eventually understands and comes clean to his family about his relationship and how it's deeper and beyond a friendship to his mom and his siblings. So I think that having that happy ending kind of in the end is definitely important when considering a queer relationship, because in most films, a lot of the queer couples are killed off, or a lot of queer men are killed in some form or way. So I think that showing that that doesn't need to happen and that there is hope for those relationships is something super important that needs to be spread through this film. So like I said before, obviously some of the major themes within this plot is the interracial relationships, queer relationships, and racial minority and class minority groups. But some more themes would be the privileges given to the white people, such as Clayton being able to go off to college and being able to afford it and not having to worry about taking care of his family back home. That also encompasses the opportunities that people based on their race are given. Another theme that is prevalent in this theme or in this plot would be the difference in forced lifestyles because of their skin color and sexuality. So obviously there was some difference in Jay and Clayton's lifestyles just based on the living conditions that they were in and the family dynamic that they grew up with. So obviously the main characters within this are Clayton and Jay. Clayton is shown right off the bat as a very stubborn, traditional person, wealthy, and wants to maintain his high profile. So obviously he's very much so against the idea of being homosexual. Jay is a very much so lower class, local, is always willing to help others and is always known to put others before himself. So he's very vulnerable all the time to Clayton and their relationship. And that's kind of where Clayton realizes that he has been stepping all over Jay, because that's the kind of person Jay is, and he realizes that he appreciates Jay more than that. So that's why he comes back and wants to be with him. The main character arc that I think is the most important and should be highlighted is Clayton's character arc. Obviously, from the beginning, he thinks that there is something wrong with him, and he denies all things against him and Jay's relationship to his fiance. Because obviously he views that as something is wrong with him if he is if he's a homosexual. But obviously as time passes, he comes back to Jay and he realizes, and he becomes vulnerable, and he realizes that he wants to be with Jay, and he's willing to do that no matter what racial discrepancies or class discrepancies are between the two. So I think that would be the major character arc that should be highlighted the most. The main supporting character that I think should kind of build into Clayton's character arc would be his ex-fiance, or his fiance at the time, but now his ex-fiance. She definitely recognizes his sexuality and tries to push him in that direction to make him happy. She doesn't try to force this upon him. She wants him to be able to be open and honest with her, which is a really good approach to it. She doesn't want to accuse him right away of his differing sexuality, but she also does not want him to feel forced into a marriage that he's not happy in. So I think that her never having any hard feelings whatsoever about Clayton and Jay's relationship is something super important that needs to be touched on, and is something that allows Clayton's character arc to be built around and just makes the story that much better and that much deeper. So obviously some of the main events and the main scenes that should be touched on and that should be for sure included would be Jay and Clayton caught having an affair, because that's when both of their worlds kind of get flipped upside down. Another one would be when Clayton's wife is talking to Clayton about his happiness and saying that, I understand that if this is what makes you happy, then you need to go do that. I think, like I said before, that is a very important aspect that needs to be included within this movie. And then lastly, I think that the main idea that I want the audience to get out of this is that I hope they get a better understanding of the oppression minorities face in society and how these are societal standards set and maintained that are not up to date or realistic anymore. I really hope they question where these standards came from and how they can help change them. I think that them being able to see the emotions that Clayton and Jay share for one another, and also the support that Clayton's ex-fiance has for that relationship, is something super important that needs to be shown within the media. And it also needs to be shown that there are happy endings within these kinds of stories. Although this is a realistic fiction genre, these are definitely issues that are present all around us today. People are definitely going through these things personally that we just sometimes are not aware of. So like I stated in the beginning of this, this is definitely a very modern approach to some historical ideas such as interracial relationships and the queer community and racial minorities. But I definitely think taking a modern approach allows people to relate to it easier and makes it more interesting and more relevant to the audience today. Thank you.